All right. So our objective for today is we're going to first go over I and me statements. We're also going to go over harmful methods of communication, what are healthy methods of communication, understanding active listening, as well as empathetic communication, and then checking our own judgments and biases in the way that we communicate. So the first thing is I statements. And uh, I and me statements allow you to take ownership of the statement that you're making, and then you're able to share from your own experiences. So, for example, if you were to use a statement like, you know how people say things sometimes that they don't mean, and they hurt people by saying those things, and sometimes there's lashback, and they end up hurting other people, and it gets confusing, right? So I don't know who you're talking about, first of all, and also it takes away from me getting to know who you are. So instead, we could use something like, I sometimes say things that I don't mean, and I hurt others when I say those things. It makes it easy for the person I'm talking to lash back, and then it ends up hurting both me and them. So this is me taking ownership of the things that I am talking about, of the things that I'm speaking to, and I'm sharing from my own experience, which allows the listener to get to know me better. So using you and they statements is a way of distancing yourself from the actions that you're talking about, and I statements and me statements allow you to own those actions and judgments. It allows the listener to be engaged and also to not feel judged or projected upon. And the listener may or may not relate to the statement that you make. So when you use you and they statements, that can cause some distancing. So we'll be going over FRAP and LAMP really briefly. So first thing is the fixing, right? So whenever we hear about a problem, there's a tendency to want to fix it. But something that what we want to remind ourselves of is that the boys that we mentor are not broken, and they don't need to be fixed. So when we try to fix their problems, we're also telling them that they're not good enough. Fixing can look like solving his problems for him, or telling him what he can do that in that situation to solve his problems. So just by a show of hands, how many of you have been in a situation where you tried to fix something and it didn't make anything better, or the same issues came back up again not too long after? Yeah. So fixing doesn't work in the mentoring circles either, right? So the next one is rescuing. So it's sometimes easy to come to the rescue and bail somebody out of a problem, but this undermines the boy's ability to learn the importance of asking for help. So when we're entering into a situation, we want to avoid minimizing or denying someone's feelings, and try to avoid redirecting the boys from experiencing his feelings. So rescuing can come in the form of telling someone that they should look on the brighter side. We're contradicting what they're saying, what the boy is expressing to us, right? So when we rescue someone in this way, we're robbing them of the opportunity to recognize where their goal is. So rescuing might look like contradicting someone when they get down on themselves, or a boy might say he's not very good at something, and a rescue would be something like telling him he's brilliant, so he has nothing to worry about. Now, that what happens is it doesn't make sense to him, right? He doesn't feel better because the problem hasn't gone away. And by telling him that he's better than what he thinks, by telling him that he's brilliant, it can cause him to spiral down, because even though you think he's smart, he doesn't think he's smart, and he hasn't solved his problem yet. And so in that moment, he feels lesser, even though you think he's more. So if you give him the answer, he'll probably feel even worse for not having thought of it himself. The next one is advise. And giving advice is often from a loving place, but it's rife with judgments. So the reason that advice is given is because we want to tell someone how to do something better. And when we give the advice, that advice often comes from a place of judgment. It comes from a place of, I know better than you, so let me tell you what you should do in this situation. You're essentially saying, you'll be better off if you do it my way. or you'll see, or I told you so, right? So what worked for you may not work for them. We're not them and they're not us. Our situations are different and they may have some similarities, but we want to avoid conflating the two things. And you may even think that you know his situation. You may even be right about the solution, but that doesn't mean that your advice is wanted or even needed. And the most profound solutions are often the ones that we come up with ourselves. And by giving advice, we're robbing them of the opportunity to solve their own problems again. And the last one is project. And projection is a misinterpretation of thinking what is happening on the inside is happening on the outside. So we use projection as a defense mechanism to point out traits in others that we don't like in ourselves. Something that I always have in the back of my mind is if you spot it, you got it. And the thing I don't like about someone else is often inevitably something that I don't like about myself, or I'm making some story up in my head. And projection is also when you take what you feel or what you believe about yourself and assume that somebody else feels the exact same way as you do. And it comes in the form of, maybe finishing someone's sentence or thinking, I know exactly how you feel. And so just remember that these challenges are the boys and those projections are your own challenges. And I want to go over an acronym that we use called WAIT, and it stands for Why Am I Talking? And this one's really important because oftentimes there's a need for silence, and we need to make room for that silence. And I can't express how important this is because a boy will sometimes be going through his feelings, and because maybe I feel discomfort or somebody feels discomfort in the room, and will want to step in and break that silence and say something because we're uncomfortable. I want to encourage you to embrace that discomfort, and when someone is in an emotional space, and to just simply wait for a moment until there's an ease in the tension before you say something. If someone is thinking, don't rescue them. Sometimes boys just take a moment to figure something out, and they need that time, so they're just processing. And if we jump in, it disrupts that thinking process and they don't end up saying what they want to say anyway. So anytime that we engage in this kind of communication, we're not listening. And if you're thinking about how to fix a problem, you're no longer listening to what the person is saying. And if you're rescuing, the thought that came before was an objection to what is going on now, and now you're feeling like you need to do something about it. If you're thinking about what you can say to change the behavior or the situation or the person that you're talking to, you're no longer holding space for them to express their challenges. So if you think you know what the other person is thinking or feeling or what they're about to say, then you're no longer curious about what they actually have to say. You're thinking about what you feel and what you should say instead of what they are experiencing, and being curious about what it is that's going on with them. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor here, and if any of these resonate with you, I'd encourage you to share, what are a few examples of one of these forms of communication that you've experienced or that you've engaged in that didn't work out for you? And was there an occasion where you experienced someone using these forms of communication with you? And go ahead and jump in.
I'll be happy to start.
Go ahead, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been working on this a lot lately, on this specific thing about exactly what you said, actually. Like in my mind, I auto-complete people's sentences as they talk, and then before they've even said the fourth word, I've got 10 different answers to the outcome, and then I jump in before the sentence is even finished with my barrier, my wall, and my defensive stance, and then the other person, most of the time my wife, it gets her back up, and we don't even end up talking about the thing we started off talking about. And the other day I just tried to shut the F up and listen. And the thing that I assumed she was going to say wasn't even close to what she was going to say. She was actually making a compliment that I would have turned into a disaster. And it was like, it was a big aha moment for me. But in my mind, I thought, okay, I figured this out now. But 46 years of hardwired training, and I talked to my therapist this morning, like, how do I implement that? How do I continue to do that? And it's still auto completes. It still wants to jump in, and I'm really working on that, praying about how to get the strength to continue to listen, actively listen, and make room for everything you just said is exactly what I'm working on. So
Thank you so much for sharing that, Mark. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that real experience with you and your wife.
I want to say, holy shit, Mark Ralph's on the call. I didn't even know that was Mark till he was speaking. I went, holy shit, Mark, how the hell are you?
good, man. How are you? Good to see you.
Nice to see you, sir. Very good.
You look good.
You.
You look good, man.
Thank you as well.
Good. It's
Yeah,
good
I'm
to see you.
sorry to interrupt, but we
No,
go days.
we do. We do go back to the early days, almost 20 years.
Good God.
Well,
Sorry.
I guess I gotta admit, this is Brian. I do all four all of the time, and I don't use the mouth and the ears in proportion. So FRAP is really wonderful, and that's why I'm on this call, to try to learn to listen better to the kids, the boys, the young men. And I guess dovetailing on Mark, I finally, after 17 years of being married, my wife the other day said, "Hey, good job. You actually sat there and just let me talk and didn't try to solve my problem." And I guess I'm in with that.
Thank you so much, Brian. That's a great share. Thank you. Frank, go ahead.
Hey guys, I'm Frank. You guys don't know me. It's probably like my first day. So thank you for having me on the team. I'm that little boy, and I'm still like, I don't really express a lot of emotions, and it's hard for me to get out emotions because I think my whole life I was when I try to express it, I was always dealing with impatient people that wanted to draw it out of me, like, you know, like it takes me time to communicate. I had to see a psychotherapist like 7 times for this, and I'm on the other side where some people get impatient with me because I'm trying to explain something and I'm trying to let it out, but it's at my gut, and I'm like, I don't know how to let it out. I want to cry, but I want to let it out and express be vulnerable. But some people, like with me, are like, come on, I'm getting, and it gets uncomfortable because it's so quiet. And yeah, I agree with that, because for some people it gets quiet and they're like, it's almost like a game of chess. What are they thinking? And it's always, I'm that little boy. So that's what I want to share. And I thank you for that, for sharing that too. So I am on the other side and I'm learning.
Thank you so much, Frank. And if you don't mind me asking, how do you feel like you would have benefited if somebody just waited?
Oh gosh. Oh wow. I mean, I can cry by you saying that, I can cry. Sometimes I need, like, hey, give me a day, and it's like, no, I want it now. It's like it, and it's a beautiful thing when people are patient and give us a chance, as boys, as men, to express and give us time too. So it's a learning process too. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for your vulnerability. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Frank. And for those of you that haven't met Frank yet, he is our new facilitator.
Ah,
And this is literally his first day. So thank you for showing up.
Hey, Tom,
Yeah.
there's another part where we can judge the shit out of all this and be absolutely right
Mm-hmm.
and still want to fix the situation and rob people of the experience of being wrong and failing and never and it's the hardest thing as a leader is to watch somebody, you know how this is going to go, and it goes exactly the way you judged it was. And still, the best thing we can do is surround them with love, let them do what they need to do. As long as long as it's not a catastrophic fail, it's no big deal, right? They failed, get back up, and away they go. I think that's the other part of this conversation.
Yeah, thank you for that, Corky. I think that for me, especially, in the last few weeks, that patience and relinquishing control have been a really big work piece for me, and allowing these boys to just learn on their own and make the mistakes that I made growing up that have been so impactful to me. So thank you for that. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, this whole conversation's awesome. I'm just getting present to how many times I was traumatized by words from a parent, from a teacher, from somebody I looked up to, and how all of these controlling behaviors for me, they're just turned into a whole arsenal of survival tools. And that's, if I do one of those things, that's why I'm doing it. And I'm just developing just a just the beginnings of some self-awareness around that. So the more I'm around this work, and the more I sit in circles and then debrief and go through all of the process that we have, the more I get present to that. And I'm like, uh-oh, I thought I was further down the road of evolution than I actually am here. So I'll keep, like you say, I'll keep coming back.
Thank you, Tom. I want to just honor you for really speaking to your current journey and your growth in the process of all of this. And also, I would offer you some grace in maybe comparing yourself even to yourself, right? So just recognizing that you are on your journey, and the growth that you get to see in yourself is an amazing thing. So thank you for your share.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to step in? We'll do one more.
Hi there.
Hey, Mahinda, go for it.
My name is Mahinda. This is my first interaction with a group in this setting. Appreciate the opportunity to join and learn. And when I was going through the list, yes, I do everything, all four, and it's mainly with relationships I've been in, and this is a good mirror to reflect, slow down, and really understand if what you're trying to do. It's one thing, you're trying to achieve something, and then you have your method, but then if it's not producing the result, then you got to change. So yeah, I really appreciate everyone's input, and I'm looking forward to learning more and helping out.
Yeah, thank you, Mahinda. Yeah, thank you for owning it and really embracing these new ideas. All right, so let's take a look at LAMP. So we just talked about some of the communication methods that we want to avoid. So let's talk about the communication methods that we want to use in our circles. And the first one is listen. We're going to go a little bit more into listening in a little bit, but I'll just briefly explain it here. So listening is paying attention to and providing an opportunity for someone to grow and learn for themselves. So we'll by listening, we're providing a mirror for the boys to learn more about themselves. We're here to hold space and create opportunities for them to find their own way. And by listening, we're creating the opportunity for them to say things that they wouldn't usually say because they might not feel safe or comfortable to do in other settings. they may not have ever had the opportunity to express themselves in this way. And so by creating that space and just listening to them, it gives them an opportunity to really express themselves in the way that Frank said before, just waiting and just giving them the time. And so that way they can really truly speak into what it is that they want, that they want to and also need to. The next one is accept, which is to openly receive without judgment. We may not relate to a boy's life or even agree with his actions, but we're here to accept them for who they are right now because they're doing the best that they can. I truly believe that everybody is always doing the best that they can with the tools that they have. And some of these boys have been given a hammer and they've been asked to chop wood with it. And so they don't quite know how to use the tools that they've been given. And the tools that they've been given may not even work for the situation that they're in. And when we accept them and their reality, it's easier to have compassion for them and also for the situation that they're in, for the struggle that they're enduring. We all take different paths. So it's important to accept that a boy is a completely different person. He's on his own path and he is a valuable and valid person. The next one is model. And this is leading by example or showing rather than telling. So sometimes the quickest way to get a boy to not do something is to tell him what to do. That's me. I hate it when people tell me what to do. And I will end up probably doing it some other way if I decide to do it. But most of the time I just won't do it. and so that's true of the boys in our groups too. And he already has people in his life that are telling him what to do all day long. He doesn't need another person telling him what to do. He has parents and teachers and coaches, administrators, counselors, and a whole host of other people that are telling him what to do. So he doesn't need us to do that. And so by carrying out the actions that we find virtuous, we lead by example and we provide the opportunity for the boy to choose his path rather than be told what to do. So my role is to get as many men into these circles as I can. So that way we have a model of being a variety of men. So that way the boys can pick and choose the virtues and the values that they find are valuable to them, and they can build themselves up to be whatever man they want to be. And it doesn't have to be just one person that he picks from. He gets to pick a variety of characteristics from everybody in that circle. So the more men that are representative and are mirrors for these boys, the more they're able to build themselves up to be the man that they want to be. And also remember that we're flawed, and these boys don't know that it's okay to be flawed. So when we show up in our flaws, that gives them the opportunity to recognize that it's okay. And the last one is praise. And this is showing admiration or acknowledgement. Honoring and acknowledging a boy for qualities that he might be hesitant to recognize or he doesn't recognize at all gives him insight into the qualities that we look for in a man. And again, praising shouldn't be confused with rescuing because it's in agreement with what the boy sees in themselves. So when we say, hey, those are pretty cool shoes, or that's a great haircut, that gives him that reinforcement that what he is as a person is good, right? So we're and then when he does something that we find admirable and we give him praise for that action, it reinforces that this is an action that where he is showing up as a man. So when we give a boy feedback and praise, we recognize him for the person that he is and value him as a person. And through praise, we reinforce the behaviors that we appreciate in him. And I'm going to, again, open up the floor. And if any of these stand out to you, I'd like for anyone to share why it stands out for you and how you would use it in a circle.
Want me to just dive in, Tom?
Yeah, go ahead, Attila.
You know, I've been told that I'm a good listener. I found out that that's really not true, because my brain kind of works overtime, and I'm usually thinking something in the background. Things shifted for me a lot in the circles when I came in, sort of preparing myself to be fully present to what's going on and leaving whatever was going on outside. And I actually had to work at that, because to sit there for an hour and then listen to some of these boys go off on a story someplace, and I'm trying to pay attention, listen to that. Meanwhile, I've got my little monkey mind running the gears in the background. That listening piece really, to me, translated more to making myself fully present there, what's going on in the conversation now, instead of maybe trying to anticipate what they're saying. Or that's why the whole, thank God we're not fixing and rescuing, because I'd be thinking about, I already tried the fix and rescue one with my son, and that never worked anyway. And he taught me later on that he just had to learn things by crash and burn, and I had to let that happen. But now he's doing great, and all I did was kind of stand back and watch a slow train wreck, but he pulled out of it. But so anyway, I just had a comment about the listening piece, because that struck me about myself, and that I add to that listening, but being fully present has really been a big help for me.
Yeah, thank you, Attila, for bringing that into context.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to point out that we've got the originator of Lamp and Frap on the call.
Right.
Colin pioneered this for Boys to Men. So I'd like to acknowledge Colin, because I don't know how many of these calls we can do where the guy that wrote the friggin' protocols on the damn call. Thanks, Colin.
Yeah, appreciate it.
And then I'd like to say that, Tom, you're doing a great job here. So I like what you've added. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I'll jump in here. The one that resonated with me was the word praise. Selfishly, I was the youngest of 7 and ridiculed and told I was the mum's little favorite and everything else, and bullied by a lot of older brothers. And it would have been really nice to just had an adult male in my life that would have just praised me and acknowledged and had admiration for whatever I was going through, even if it was a stupid idea or whatever, just somebody to listen and not ridicule. So I can really relate in my own world how that would have made me feel as a little boy, or as a young man, and what that might have done for me. So yeah, that struck home a lot.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mark. I really appreciate you bringing in your truth to that. We got room for one more.
I'm going to say something here.
Go for it, Dan.
All these things that you're talking about and trying to explain them to us, and we've heard them before, and we're what did I just do? Just turned you off. Now I turn back on. So some of us, we take notes, and try to figure this thing out. But I think everybody will agree that as we're talking about these things, you are the example. So we get to hear exactly what we're supposed to be doing through your praising. So I'll just praise you and say, you're knocking it out of the park. Man. Keep going. Nodding heads. I'm seeing all these nodding heads. There you go.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot. Thank you. All right, so let's go on to listening. So listening, so the intention behind it is that growth is limited without effective communication, right? And how we communicate on the inside is often how we communicate on the outside. And learning to communicate more effectively empowers us and empowers those around us. So learning to listen and hold space isn't about right or wrong. It's about understanding where you are and where you want to be, whether it's conscious or unconscious. These listening levels aren't a judgment of who you are, but it's a tool to recognize where you are in this moment. So the first one is elsewhere. You're barely listening and you're waiting for your turn to speak. You're distracted by something else and not really paying very much attention. The next one is self-centered. You're listening through a filter of your feelings, your judgments, and any charges that you have. And you're listening for what you agree with and what you disagree with. The next one is curious. You're listening from a place of curiosity and learning. You're unattached and empathetic, and you're listening without judgments. The next one is engaged. You're attentive to nonverbal communication, so tone, body language, volume, and all sorts of other things. And you're tuned into your intuition. So your brain picks up all these cues, and there's just this gut feeling about something that's going on. And being in tune with that allows you to be more engaged. And the last one is impactful. You're listening to what's behind the words and listening to the intentions while creating opportunities for the boys to go even deeper. And so I want to take a second and mention again that these listening levels aren't a judgment on who you are as a person or anything, any judgments on you. This is just where you are. So for example, if I am angry, then I'm probably not going to be very curious about what's going on. I'm probably going to be barely listening or self-centered at the best. And I'm going to be listening through all these charges and judgments that I have about the person that I'm trying to listen to. I had an experience not too long ago where I didn't feel like this container was safe, and then everything that the person was saying was barely registering, and it wasn't for a lack of wanting to listen. I was looking at him and listening, and it was just bouncing right off of me, and I was distracted, and I couldn't really listen to the words, and that's just where I was. I mean, I'm not a bad person for it. It's just that I just wasn't able to listen curiously or engaged or impactful in that interaction. And so we're going to do a little bit of a listening exercise. Let me see how many people we've got here. We've got 12 people per. Okay, so I'm going to split everybody into pairs, and I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes, and I'm going to have each of you share very briefly what it means to be, what mentorship means to you. And it's important to keep this short and concise because we're creating opportunities for the boys to speak. So the longer that we allow ourselves to ramble, the less time they have to share. So telling a story takes time away from the boy's opportunities to reveal himself. At the same time, these stories are really important for modeling and to also create a setting where the boys are able to understand themselves a lot better. So sharing your experience and connection to something, or sharing your connection with a boy opens up those opportunities. So once you've made the point, avoid the continuation and just make your point. And then recognize when you're on a tangent and ask yourself if it's so important that they have to hear about these specific details, and just move on to the point without really telling every last detail of the story. I love that so many of us are great storytellers. Actually, I'm not going to put myself in there. Like, so many of you guys are great storytellers, and I love it. I love hearing your stories. And oftentimes what happens is that in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, when are the boys going to get to share? And sometimes they don't get to share. And that's okay, but we want to try to make as much space for them as we can. So again, the exercise is I'm gonna create pairs um, and you're going to share for 2 minutes, or each person is going to share for 2 minutes. I'm going to set a timer for 2, and then after the 2 minutes, you're going to swap. And I'm going to give you, actually, okay, let's try it again. We're going to do, each person is going to share for 2 minutes. So one person is going to share first, and then I'm going to give you a minute to reflect back to your partner what you heard them say. And then we're going to switch. The other person's going to share, and then I'm going to give you 1 minute after the 2 minute share to reflect back to your partner what you heard them say. All right. Does anyone have any questions before we start this?
Okay. And Tom, can you just repeat the key question? Is it what mentorship means to me? That's the key question.
That's correct. Yeah. What does mentorship mean to you?
Thank you.
All right, off we go. All right, so let's take a moment to reflect on what it felt like to share and then what it felt like to be heard. And if you have any thoughts or if you want to share your experience, feel free to step in and share your experience with this exercise.
I'm gonna go first on this one. Tom, I mentioned to you earlier today that I have to leave this meeting, so let me go first on this. And as we were talking, and as I was listening, it became quite apparent that that my partner was stealing my lines. We had quite a few of the same thoughts, and I can't imagine that we all didn't do that just a little bit. We kind of tweaked it a little bit and found common ground there. So hopefully we're all in this together, doing the same sort of thing. Yeah, it was easy enough.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that, Dan. Yeah, oftentimes, we do have similar motivations for stepping into this work, and so I'm not surprised that you got to hear some of yourself in the share. So thank you for that.
And I apologize that I've made a commitment that I need to go to.
No apology needed.
So don't hate me for
that.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Okay. If I can figure out which button to push, I'll try this one.
All right. Would anyone else like to step in and share their experience?
I can share. This is Robbie in Denver. I think, the short answer is it felt good. Socially, a lot of times I'm a little bit slower to initiate, like saying something. And so and I think Frank was also mentioning that earlier, having time and space to actually express myself in a more kind of like a formal container. It feels like, hey, there actually is a space for me to be heard and seen, and so that kind of just warms the heart for me. I'm in with that.
Thank you, Ravi.
I can jump in. I wrote down the levels elsewhere, self-centered, curious. I stopped at curious because I'm like, I've never been above self-centered for more than about one time in one conversation, I think, in my life. And Brian was in my room, and I went first, and I didn't take long to say my part, and he reflected back quite brilliantly what I said, and then he talked. And one of the first thing he said was that he was a commercial real estate agent, and I'm like, oh, I've got 6 commercial properties. I could work with this guy. And all the time he's talking, and I'm just elsewhere. And I'm like, Mark, what are you doing? It was like textbook. You couldn't have made it up. I think you're playing games with me, Tom. You put me in the room with him. So yeah, I think this works a lot about me. I have some work to do.
And I should probably go next. This is Brian.
Go ahead, Brian.
I'm sorry. I apologize to Mark for having to be in the room with me, because I had a very difficult time after 9 years of being a mentor, and I had a difficult time expressing myself, I believe, and I was tangential a bit. And I mentioned that I try to frap all the time, and I'm trying to learn not to. And I think this is why this is so beneficial, as I said earlier. And while I did really actively try to listen, I did repeat. But when it came to switching it over, I know what it means, what mentoring means to me, but I don't think I expressed it as well as I could have. I'm in with that.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing your experience. I mean, this is real time, and this is why I love these exercises, is because it gives us insight and also practice to do, something that if you just looked at and you read off a page and you'd be like, oh, like, I mean, I would have thought, hey, this is pretty easy. I can do this, right? And in practice, it tends to be a lot harder. And having the opportunity to practice in a setting where it's low stakes with each other, where we're all learning, where I'm learning from you, it helps me feel comfortable in making these mistakes that I didn't know that I would make. So thank you for sharing your real experiences. Would anyone else like to share?
This is Corky. I'm in recovery. And one of the things about being an alcoholic is coming to grips with just how motherfucking self-centered I have been in my life. And I learned the difference between emotional, physical sobriety, which is not drinking, and then emotional sobriety, which happened about 5 years into recovery, because I started to feel and learn and move past the self-centeredness and up the ladder. And so when you were talking about it, that's what all I could think about was, it's tough enough being a man. It's really tough being an alcoholic man.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your real experience and how this has affected you. So appreciate that, Corky. Always great insight.
Boy, isn't that modeling authenticity? Way to go, Cork.
Oh. Yay. Yay, I'm an alcoholic.
No, but you're being authentic. That's mentoring 101.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna add something here because I've noticed this in myself. The on the other side of the praise is receiving, and I have a hard time receiving. And so I just want to point out that these boys are probably going to have a hard time receiving too. Mm-hmm. All right. Anyone else? All right, let's keep going then. All right, let's talk about empathetic communication. I could spend another hour on this, but fortunately, I have an empathetic communication workshop. Little plug there. That and so we can go into that in a different workshop. So I'll just basically go over the goal is to focus on a deeper understanding. So a tell me more kind of feeling, and focusing on curiosity, where we're asking questions rather than making statements. And then avoid the 3 C's, which are convincing, convicting, and converting. We want to try to avoid soapboxing and giving advice, planning on how to make them wrong and then how to make you right. So use the reflection tool. Verify what you heard by repeating what they said back to them. And it's important to use their words. If you're pointing, or if you're clarifying, and then using your own words to reflect back to them, how you are seeing it from your perspective. And then giving them the opportunity to correct it if it's inaccurate. And that's really important because, sometimes whenever I reflect something, I may not have it right. And then giving opportunity for clarification really opens up the conversation, because then not only does the boy feel heard, but it also gives me a more accurate representation of what that boy is actually trying to say. And the next thing is understanding understanding and self-management. So keep in mind that your role as the listener is to be a mirror in the service of holding space. You're there to hold space and on occasion share your experiences or to model for them. If you find yourself having thoughts while a boy is speaking, then you're no longer listening. So we want to try to put aside our opinions, our preferences, any judgments that we have, and then prior beliefs in order to reflect and support the boy that needs to be heard. And remember that they aren't right or wrong, and it's not your place to tell them one way or the other. Your biases prevent you from showing up as a compassionate man. The way a boy thinks or does something doesn't have to be the way that you did it. And you're not him, again, and he's not you. So understand that the only thing that he needs is support. So let's take a look at using what and how questions versus why questions. So what and how questions are ones of curiosity, and those are used as clarification. So what did you mean when you said this? Or how did that happen again? I'm not can you clarify? It gives us the opportunity to build on what the boy is already saying. Why can often lead to storytelling or blaming or excuses. And so what happens is, they have parents or guardians or teachers that are asking them why questions all the time. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? And they're accusatory, right? Those questions come off as being accusatory. And so when we ask them why questions, they get right into their head. And oftentimes what I hear are excuses and sometimes even lies, right? I know that as a kid, when I was asked questions like that, I'd immediately go to lying because that was the easy way out. And it was easier for me to just, say something off the cuff without really digging in deep, because, it was just my defensive mechanism. So again, why questions get them into their heads rather than into their hearts. And you won't always be able to avoid why questions, but just do your best in avoiding that accusatory tone, and take a moment to reflect on how that question is going to come across, and then ask the open-ended question. So we want to try to focus on open-ended questions rather than yes or no questions, because it allows us to focus more on learning and uncovering deeper meaning. So I've got one more exercise for you, and this is not an exercise that we're going to do with each other. This is something that I want you to take with you. And the question is, and I'm going to throw it into the chat here. The question is, what have you, okay, so I want you to think of somebody that you want to practice these listening skills with. And then I want you to ask them the question, what have you been trying to tell me that I have been unwilling to hear? So what have you been trying to tell me? Oops, let me try that again. There we go. Okay, so what have you been trying to tell me that I have been unwilling to hear? And the first person that pops into your mind is probably the best person to talk to or to ask this question, even if there's resistance. And I just want you to listen. No response, maybe a thank you at the end, and just give that person the opportunity to speak what it is that is in their hearts. And then after that, feel free to reflect and notice where you were on that listening chart, and how did that feel for you? All right. That's it. Anyone have any questions?
Tom,
Well,
will you be sending the handouts of these slides out by any chance?
I can send you a PDF.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
When is your empathetic communication course?
That is a good question.
Class?
Let me look that up.
Or maybe you could send that out to the group, because I'd be curious or interested.
It's going to be a while until we get to that one. That one will happen in April of next year. And so I'll send out the notification for that. The next one that we do will be on emotional intelligence.
When is the next weekend for the boys?
December 1st.
Wow, that's really soon. Okay.
It is soon, yes.
Yeah, we got some planning to do.
We do.
Yeah, Jam, are you still looking for volunteers for that weekend or need help?
I am always looking for volunteers to help. And I'll send out a here, I'm gonna stop the recording.